I'm Katie.
I'm Anna.
She's a psychotherapist.
And she runs a photography empire. Together we make music and we podcast
to encourage ourselves
and you
to do the things that scare us most.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Doing Scary Things podcast. Today we get to talk to an incredible artist named Deeann Rieves, and she tells us all about the processes she's created for herself, and we both really think that she's such a great example and a great picture of the drive it takes to succeed as an artist. She also describes times in her life when she was encouraged by family members and teachers who urged her to keep going before they even knew whether or not she could succeed. We love to hear that so much, and we hope it encourages you to encourage the other people in your lives and their interests. Without further ado, here's our chat with Deeann Rieves.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Would you mind to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us all about what you do?
Yeah, I am Deeann Rieves, and I am an artist. I'm a painter. I do mostly abstract work and mixed media. So I stitch with my sewing machine on painted paper and then use the paper as collage and then add lots of texture to my work after that. And sell my work online and at art shows and art festivals outdoors.
That's so cool. How did you get started in that? Is that something you always thought you'd do or wanted to do?
I always loved art, like even as a little child, but like who doesn't love art when they're a kid?
Art's the best.
Yeah. But my mom always said I would sit for longer than anybody else, like to color and just keep working. And she always tells this story about how one time I was like really quiet and she was wondering where I was. And I had paused the VCR and was drawing Winnie the Pooh and like all of the characters. And like if it would unpause, you know how they used to?
Yeah.
I would rewind it and pause it again and keep drawing it. She was like, what?
Yeah.
Wow. And I had a great art teacher in elementary school that my parents knew. So I did like some private lessons with her. And then in middle school, I, did art when you could choose art or, I don't remember what the other option was. I chose art.
Obviously you chose art.
Yeah. And then in high school, I actually didn't even sign up for art freshman year. And apparently my middle school art teacher emailed the high school art teacher and said, I'm so excited you're going to have XYZ, like these students. And Miss Briscoe, the high school teacher, was like, she's not in my class. But she knew my name because she had my brother. Like, he took it as an elective because he took all the easy classes.
Like you do.
Yeah. And so she came and found me and was like, why didn't you do this? And I was like, well, I was on the dance team. And so I already had those were taking up some of my electives and something else. But so I rearranged everything because she came and found me. Because she was like, the only way for you to do like AP art and then pursue this is if you do it all 4 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was cool. And then so probably like my junior year, she became like really encouraging and told my parents like, I really think she could like do this as a career. And my dad's in ministry and my mom was a school teacher for a while, but like, who knows that art is like a thing that you could tell your kid to do. But my brother is a musician and they super encouraged him along that path. So it's cool that I had parents that were like, okay, yeah, you can do the art thing. And, so Nicole Briscoe, the teacher, like really held my hand through applying to art school and encouraging me in that way, like that you could do this. And so then I went to an art school, like a Memphis College of Art is just an art school. It's actually closing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's so bizarre. Super weird that it's just like shutting down.
Wow.
In like a year.
Oh my goodness.
Been around forever. It's like a major
art
college.
school.
Yeah. Anyway, so when I went there, it was like 300 students-ish, and you don't have to take any of the like foundational normal college classes. So it's all focused on just, your studio art classes, writing, art history, really all things that pertain to art. So yeah, it was awesome.
Side note, did they give you any business classes?
No.
Interesting.
But they do, well, they won't anymore. Because
I was like, and they're closing. Oh, no.
But a lot of art schools have gotten better over the last few years at offering some sort of, like, this is how you run a business. This is how you make a website.
Yeah.
But, like, when I graduated in 2007, Instagram wasn't a thing.
Right.
Squarespace wasn't a thing.
Yeah. Square.
It was very, Square wasn't a thing. All the things that I use now.
Yeah.
It was all just like the old school way, like apply to a gallery. And apply to calls for art at like art galleries and ship your work. And if it doesn't sell, they'll ship it back.
Oh my gosh.
So,
yeah.
I mean, things changed drastically.
Really fast.
But yeah, I do remember, so one of my favorite professors, Susan Makastad, she was like the main painting professor. I remember my last semester class with her, because I was a painting major. I remember her talking about like creating a studio practice for yourself and like how once we graduated, if we wanted to like really pursue our artwork, that it would take a lot of self-discipline and that we really had to treat our studio practice like a job and show up every day and paint something. And she suggested doing the applying to shows and calls for art as a deadline for yourself. So you have something to work towards instead of just like, what's the point of my life?
Yeah. Totally. She's protecting you from an existential crisis.
Yeah. Which I do remember that first year graduating from art school, I moved to Nashville and lived with my granddad because he was like, you can live here because my now husband was in Nashville at Belmont.
Nice.
So my granddad was like, you can live here and get on your feet. And I really attribute that to being why I really truly got to just paint that year. Like,
that's so cool.
I didn't have to worry about rent or anything. I didn't have to apply. Like, so many of my friends were like applying to jobs and going, we don't know how to do anything because we went to art school. But yeah. So.
Wow, that's so nice.
That's awesome.
It sounds like you've had a lot of really supportive people to encourage you along the way.
Yeah, I do. I've had supportive family for sure. And then I do feel like I've had several teachers along the way that were, instrumental. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Like really helping me and encouraging me to do it.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of people like at crucial moments, or maybe in hindsight, what turns out to be these crucial moments, right? Have sort of recognized that in you. And they're like, wow, this is significant,
Right.
Do you remember, like, at any of those pivotal points, did you agree with them? Or was it a surprise to you that they really saw something in you? Or were you like, oh, no, I'm just average. I'm not that good, or how'd you feel about that?
In high school, there's not that many people that are going to be like, I really love art. Mm-hmm. And I went to a smallish high school. I graduated with maybe 160 people. So there were probably maybe 4 to 6 of us that even did AP art. So we got a lot of like extra attention by the time we were seniors. But I didn't ever really feel like I don't agree with what y'all are saying.
Yeah.
It was more just like, really? You think I could do this?
Yeah.
And then feeling like everything was sort of verified, like once I got into art school and I got a scholarship and,
you're like, okay, that's supporting evidence.
Right. Yeah. Something
cool.
could maybe come of this.
What was the process like? I know you said, it was great to have that year with your granddad, but when you were kind of thinking, okay, this is going to be my job, like, was that just a huge question mark? Did you understand, like, what you're going to have to do to be able to make money at it, or?
I did not. I mean, it was a huge question mark. So I took, maybe my senior year in college or maybe junior year, I took a psychology class as one of my extracurricular things. And art therapy sort of was like on my mind, and a couple of my good friends in school were also interested in that. So we like really begged our school to have an adjunct professor come from a different college to teach like an additional psychology class. And then I ended up one summer at home even, like I researched if I were to decide to go to get my art therapy degree, what prerequisites do I need? And I needed like 5 psychology credits, ceramics, which I was a painting major, and I just happened to never take ceramics. Mm-hmm. And that may have been it. Everything else I'd done, like, painting, drawing, whatever. So one summer I moved home for the summer, and I took like 2 or 3 psychology classes at a community college in Texarkana, where I'm from in Texas.
You're from Texarkana?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's where I grew up my whole life. And so I took some classes there so that I had all my prerequisites done in case I decided to pursue that. And took ceramics my senior year, which was really kind of funny. Like by then, to be like, I'm going to try something new.
Yeah.
But I loved it. Like I do. Sometimes I still think about how much I loved that medium.
Yeah.
And I remember it was another like pivotal conversation. I looked into art therapy programs and because like I said, I had a friend who actually did pursue it, and she's an art therapist, one of my friends from college, and she and I were like, we could go to this school or that school, and looking into the different programs. And I remember my dad at one point, I guess we were on the phone, I don't even remember. I just remember him saying, don't you feel like you should just pursue the art for give it a year? Like, do you think you could, put the brakes on art therapy and just try out what you already went to school for?
Yeah.
And if you want to do workshops or classes with people that uses art therapy techniques or whatever, just for fun, you could do that, and you wouldn't have to be a licensed counselor. Because I don't know how it is now, but back then, especially in Tennessee, every state was different. A lot of people don't, I think insurance-wise, they can't bill an art therapist the same way they can bill a regular therapist. So I would have had to go through a whole art therapy master's program, and then also
licensure.
In social work or counseling.
Wow.
So I would have basically been in school for 4 or 5 more years or something, and it was kind of do I really want to do this?
Yeah.
And it was one of those conversations where it's okay, yeah, I'll do this for a while. And I did teach workshops and stuff at first, and it was fun. But I'm glad I didn't rush myself into another program and gave myself the time.
Can we just point out, and correct me if this isn't what you were saying, but I know my mind does this all the time, where it's oh, well, that must be how I make money. And that must be the path. So let me spend X number more years doing something that's totally different, because that has to be the only way.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm so glad your dad said that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not always the advice adults are giving us,
Right.
Totally.
But I love that clarity of why don't you do the thing?
Yeah. Just try this for a while at first.
Yeah.
And just the practicality of, because I think this is applicable in so many areas where it's you don't have to go ahead and commit to getting that other master's or whatever. You can try it out and incorporate some of the elements of this thing that you want to pursue, that you might want to pursue, right? And try them on and try them experientially before you're going down that road and going, well, this must be the only way. I think that's such an important thing for anybody who isn't sure. They're curious about something, or they're interested in something, but is there any way for you to try it before you go get fully trained or whatever?
Right.
That's so important.
Yeah, definitely.
So now it's been over a decade, you said, since you've graduated college.
Mm-hmm.
You're still painting every day. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you still love it? Like, are you
I
glad
do.
you did it?
Sometimes. So I've been listening to books and reading books about the Enneagram.
Yes.
And, I think I'm a 3, even though one of the books I listened to, the whole chapter, I was thinking, that is not me. And then I thought, maybe that's why that's me, is that I can't listen to this chapter.
Yeah.
But it was talking about how 3s like just like disassociate their feelings with things. So sometimes it is hard for me when people are like, do you love this and that? I'm like, I guess. I mean,
You're like, I do it every day.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
I get that. I hate when people ask me that about photography, but that might be for different reasons.
yeah.
But no, I mean, I guess I'll phrase it a different way. Are you happy with the profession? Like, are you glad that you're getting to do it? Because I do feel it's a little rare, maybe, to make a living as an artist. I mean, it's not something that everybody does, I guess.
Right. I certainly felt like, how in the world am I going to do this? What does this even look like when I graduated? And now because of Instagram, I know so many other artists that I'm connected with across different countries and, you know, just follow them on Instagram and feel like this camaraderie with them. Like,
it's cool.
This is how we do it. And, you know, I can do this type of thing. But yeah, at first, like I said, I was applying to galleries and shows, and it was just like, what is happening? Like, this is tiring, and like, I don't know, but it was good. I'm glad it started that way. And the most important thing, like if somebody out there is thinking, how do I become an artist? The most important thing is to give yourself that time.
Yeah.
Like, who is it? Malcolm Gladwell, that talks about the, like, amount of hours you have to spend on your craft. And it truly is like, you just literally have to sit in your studio, even if all you're doing is staring at your work for a day or for months, like feeling like you're struggling. And then, but you have to get through that step, and you do have to enjoy the process of it. Like, I remember one of my drawing professors talking about that, like, saying that maybe it was a book he told me to read, but I remember him talking about it too. Like, the only artists that are truly successful are the ones that come back to the struggle, like the actual struggle of the process, that they enjoy that part. Somewhere inside of them, they like enjoy that.
I love it.
Torture, sort of yourself. Like,
well, you can't have the breakthrough without it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it made me think about like the difference between people who are like, okay, this is the solution, this is the project, whatever, like, I'm done, and didn't really enjoy the, like, what does this mean, and who do I want to speak to, and
and who am I when I show up to this, you know? It's interesting.
Yeah. So I do enjoy, you know, being in my studio and the process of working through ideas and
the torture.
Yeah. The hard part.
Yeah.
Somewhere in me enjoys that part.
Yeah.
So you mean being a painter is not glamorous?
Yeah. Well, and I think because I do mixed media and my work is so, I do so many like process-based steps. I feel like if I were just to make a painting, like if I were literally to be like, hang a canvas on the wall and just paint and literally only have acrylic paint or oil paint or whatever just right there, I feel like that even would be a different feel, because in my studio I just have a mess everywhere, because I work on the floor, then I work on the table, and then I work at my sewing machine, and then at the very end I'm working like a normal painter with it just hanging on the wall.
Finishing touches.
Yeah. So, and all of that becomes even more complex with my daughters in the studio with me these days. So, but yeah.
And I do want to ask you about your daughters, but first, how did you develop this mixed media process?
Yes, I was about to ask that.
Where did this come from?
We have to go back a little ways for that. So in school, I was a painting major, like I mentioned, and my high school teacher loved collage, so I feel like she was always having us like collage into paintings. And So in art school, there was a semester where they had like a collage class. So I took that and that was fun. But I also took a lot of surface design classes. I think there was like one elective, you could choose one studio elective each semester. So I would have a painting class and a drawing class basically every semester, and then one extra studio class because you took 3. So I took like printmaking one time. I took ceramics my senior semester, and I did, but I took a lot of surface design, which is fiber arts, and like embroidery techniques and sewing and dyeing fabrics and learning different, anything to do with like textile and fiber art. And I do wish I had taken even more because I loved that, except one semester, the advanced class was doing felting, which I can't stand. Like,
Really?
I can't stand the like look of felt, the feel of it. It's like, I guess my skin's always dry, and the idea of like touching felt makes me want to throw up.
I love it.
So I remember being like, I'm not taking that class, but I will take other surface design classes.
That's so funny.
But I remember like we dyed silk scarves, and like we made this enormous like textile screen printed fabric pattern. Like we had to do like a 4-layer pattern screen print like down this whole entire banner. And
whoa.
It was funny because I remember my first semester taking that class. The teacher the first day or week assumed we all knew how to sew, and I guess I should have known how to sew, but I was kind of like, I don't even know how to use my sewing machine.
Yeah, they're very intimidating to like thread and stuff.
Oh, and like our first assignment was like all these sewing techniques. Like we had to make a little like quilt, you know, like
oh my god,
type of like a teeny, like a pot holder, but like using a quilting technique. And we had to do all these different embroidery techniques and whatever, but some of them were machine oriented. And I went to my RA was in my class, and there's a lot of returning adult students in art school.
Nice.
Because, you know, people as an adult are like, I'm gonna become an artist, which is awesome.
That's awesome.
So my RA was older, and she was so sweet, and she was like, you can come to my room and I'll show you how to use your sewing machine.
Oh, I thought RA meant returning adult.
Oh, no, like the
resident advisor.
Yes, no, I get it now.
In the
like,
dorm.
oh, wait a minute. That's 2 different RAs.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
She's like an RA squared.
Yeah.
For the record, I still don't know how to use a sewing machine, so I mean, I think that's
people assume
pretty
I
normal.
can sew like clothes and stuff. I'm like, if I need anything like a button fixed or something hemmed, I'm like, Mom, here. Can you fix this? Because I
love it.
I can only sew abstract drawings.
I was hoping you were going to say you took your buttons to Lloyd to fix, because my husband took a sewing class in high school, so I literally give him my stuff.
That's
and I'm
awesome.
like, please
That's
help.
hilarious.
I can't do this.
Yeah.
John, if you're listening, you need to keep up with Dan and Lloyd. Come on.
I don't know if Lloyd can do that.
We'll put Lloyd on the spot as well.
I'm just giving Lloyd the credit whether he can do it or not.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
So you went to her room to sew.
Right, and she taught me how to sew on my sewing machine.
That's amazing.
For the class. And then, so back to how did I start doing what I'm doing now?
Yeah.
So I took a lot of surface design. My senior year, I did, I don't even remember what it was called, but it was like an independent study with the surface design teacher to try to make something for my senior, like, BFA show.
Yeah.
That combined painting and sewing. And it was still very fiber art based because I was dealing with the fiber arts teacher. And it honestly took me several years outside of school to figure out how to like marry the two together. So I was always interested in figurative work. So right out of school, I was still doing like figurative work with collaged backgrounds. Then I realized I was really enjoying the backgrounds. I did that for probably a couple of years at my granddad's house, like in his sunroom. He had this amazing sunroom. And he was like, you can use this for your studio. And
nice.
so I did that for a while. And then Lloyd and I got married and moved to Atlanta, and my studio was suddenly like the dining room in our very tiny apartment.
Hey.
Yeah. And I just, every time I've ever moved or moved houses or moved studios, my work has changed drastically.
Interesting.
And it takes time for me to like see the shift happen and go, oh,
Yeah.
my work changed again. But when I moved there, I was just feeling like I wanted to do an abstract series. But in painting, I had only ever done one abstract painting, and it was the ugliest thing you'd ever seen.
One entire painting. Like one.
You know, maybe two in college. Like,
That's so interesting.
we had this assignment where we were supposed to listen to a jazz song and create a painting with the beats or whatever. So I thought, this is going to be really cool because, like, it'll have really a busy spot and then this, like, slow whatever. No. The song that the professor chose was a terrible idea for that project because it was like, ba-dum-bum, it's so busy.
It's like
the
big
entire
band, like,
time.
So I'm just going to take a bunch of paint and just throw it.
So yeah, the paint was just like all of these tiny crazy marks and layers and layers. It's a huge mess.
I'm just going to paint a trombone and call it a day.
Yeah.
Like, forget it.
So my brother liked it when he was a bachelor before he got married, and he had it in his house. And then when he got married, I told his wife, "You do not have to keep that painting. It's ugly."
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love it
Actually,
so
I think I
much.
ended up painting over it. Like, they gave me the canvas back, and I was like, "I'll make you something more."
That was nice.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
really
So
funny.
I had not done much abstract painting in college or ever. And maybe that's because my professors were none of them were really abstract
Yeah.
artists themselves. And I didn't even take a whole lot of art history with modern art because the semesters that I took all my art history credits, like they offered like American art history and Baroque art history, and so that's what I took. And then the next semester was like modern art, and I was like, crap, I missed it.
Darn.
But so I started doing these little pieces to try to figure out how do I do anything abstract, and I just couldn't think abstract with paint, but I could think abstract with fabric and thread. So my work leaned very fiber art for a couple of years. I had pieces that were like breaking the canvas and coming off, and like even fabric and random pieces pieced together, like puddling onto the floor. Everything conceptually was about things barely holding together. And the thread, I was using this machine embroidery technique on top of solvay, which is like a dissolvable plastic. So you would sew on this plastic and then put it in water and like rub the plastic away. And then all you would have left was like thread, almost like a doily.
Nice.
For people who have no idea what I'm talking about.
I mean,
almost
for
like
people
lace.
who love doilies.
Yeah. So my work was all about just things that were barely holding together, which was cool conceptually, but I do wonder how those pieces are doing, like, in people's
The
houses
two in
these
my
days.
house are doing great, and I love them so much.
Are things falling off of the piece? Like, you know.
I know.
So those were really fun and kind of wild. Some people, it was hard for them to think, like, when I would do a show, they would be like, so my wall is going to show through this hole in the canvas? I was like, yeah, I mean, isn't your wall pretty? Like,
Are you trying to cover something?
don't you have like gray walls that are perfect for hanging art? Anyway, so I did fiber art. I wouldn't have called myself a fiber artist because I still felt like I was a painter, but my work was sort of fiber art for a couple of years. And then I started to do these little pieces on paper and realized I could use that machine embroidery, same technique, but on the paper I could combine it with paint better than these random pieces of lace and fabric that I was like stitching together to make these crazy things. So, and it was a little easier to sell, which at the time I wasn't selling a ton of work the way I do now. So the idea of it selling easier was like
Pretty
a big
appealing.
bonus. Yeah. It's like someone I could actually, you know, put this in a frame, or it was just a little easier. And then my work still developed over time, like changed some. We moved to our house in Marietta, outside of Atlanta. And I feel like that's where I really started to thrive as an artist. Like, I started working abstract, and I really felt like I found my voice when that happened, when I started doing those works on paper, and I realized I could collage paper and put it on. I always liked wood, painting on wood, more than I liked canvas. So I could combine the collage with wood better than canvas, and I just felt like I found a groove of, like, these are my steps that I go through to make a piece, and when I'm stuck, I can still rest in the steps. Like, what's next? This step is next, so that's what I'll do.
Wow. That's like so profound. I mean, I was already just thinking, like, how incredible it will be for, you know, people listening to this to just hear an artist, like a living, breathing artist who's a painter, saying, you know, the steps. Like, I do these steps, and that's how I create. It's not like you're, you know, putting on a blindfold and, like, slinging paint at the wall. Like, it's totally the opposite of that. And yet there's still so much, you know, of yourself and your uniqueness that you put into each piece, like, also with steps, you know. Right. That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, you can kind of lean on the process-based side of it when you're stuck conceptually, or just on a personal level if you're feeling stuck.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, that's so applicable to everybody. Like, you can rest in, I'm just going to do the next step, you know?
Was there ever a time you thought about doing something different, or you thought, like, you didn't want to keep going? Or?
So right about the time we moved into that house in Marietta, I guess the feeling of, like, oh my gosh, we have, like, a house and a mortgage and whatever was sort of heavy. And I have always been sort of goal-oriented. And so even at my granddad's house in that studio, I was like, okay, I want to try to make $400 a month, because if I have a roommate, I think I need $400 a month to pay rent.
Love it.
In Nashville right now, which is like, there's no way that that's a goal for anyone now, but back then it worked. So, and it was a good, like, small, attainable goal to give myself. Like, I'm going to try to make $400 a month every month. And that first year, I think that's about what I made. And then the next year, I remember deciding, like, I don't remember if there was because if I was going to say the next year, I remember thinking 800, which is a huge jump from 400, but I don't remember the in-between. I do remember thinking, I need to make 800 a month. And then sort of, I've always, like, paid myself out of a business account the same amount every month, no matter what, and every year I give myself a raise.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I do the opposite.
I want your discipline.
I have no structure at all.
So I, like, you know, at the time I was giving myself $800 a month. So I was like, I have to make $800 so that my account doesn't, so that I can pay myself.
Yeah.
And each year, that's sort of how I kept a goal in my head. When we moved into that house, I don't remember what happened. Maybe there was a couple of months in a row where, like, what had always worried me was, like, what if nothing happens for several months in a row?
Sure.
What am I going to do? Which is what everybody fears if you're going to be an entrepreneur in any field. And it happened. And I was like, how are we going to, how do I keep going? But the reality was, no one out there knew that I hadn't made my stupid goal for that month for multiple months in a row. And at the time, like, Lloyd was picking up the slack doing his thing. And we both, he's a musician and producer, so we both have these kind of weird careers. And we do sort of, like, ebb and flow, like, okay, we can depend on you, we can depend on me, we can do this. And I just remember him being really encouraging at that time, like, don't worry about that. Like, what do you want to make? And I was like, I don't know, because I think...
No, I'm just kidding.
Truly, I'm 3. I was like, I need to make money. I don't know what I'm going to make. I want to sell something.
Yeah.
I need to make my goal. And I remember him being like, well, what do you want to make? And I remember thinking, I should make what I would want to hang in my house, which is so obvious, but it's like, never occurred to me to think of my art that way. Like, what would I want to hang in
as
my
a consumer?
own house?
Yeah.
I don't
love
know.
that.
So I remember just working for a little while, being like, feeling pretty lost, but also at the same time it being very freeing. Like, this thing that I always feared, the whole like, what if nothing happens for several months in a row, happened.
Yeah.
And I made it through it, and no one knew the difference.
I love that.
And that could still happen this year, next year, whatever. Like, no one would know unless I just like talked about it all the time, which, you know, you're not going to do.
Yeah.
But also you were fine.
Yeah.
Clearly.
It was like, I was fine. And honestly, that was, in some ways, looking back, a breakthrough, because my work changed again and got better because of it. And I did this like random show at a school in Atlanta and met some of the other artists at that show, and they were like, you should consider doing outdoor shows. And I was like, are you crazy? Like, I don't have a trailer. I don't have like these giant wooden displays to hang my art on. And they were like, you don't need any of that stuff. And they walked me through like what I would need to buy to do an outdoor shows, and said I should really try it. And I had a really good year that year, so I had some money that I could invest in my tent and all of the things.
Yeah.
And I remember Lloyd and I talking about it and being like, okay, like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to apply to some outdoor shows, which means I have to buy a tent and take a picture of the tent with all my art in it. So we have to figure this out. And that same year, I got Squarespace, which was a big deal for me because being in an art school background, I had just always felt like, well, back then I felt like selling your own work and having like add to cart on your art website just seemed so tacky to me at the time. Like, I was like, your website's supposed to be this online portfolio with your like CV and your paintings and like
a showcase, not a store.
Yeah, inquire for pricing type of thing. And I had coffee with a friend, and she was like, no, you don't need to worry about any of that. She was like, instead of getting an email that's like, how much does this painting cost? You need to get an email that says, this painting sold. Ship it to this person.
The money is in your account.
Yeah.
Yes.
Transferred.
Love it.
And I remember thinking, that's so true too, because how many people would even email an artist that doesn't have pricing on their website?
Yeah.
I sure wouldn't.
They don't know if it's 500, 50,000.
Right.
Like, they have no clue.
No idea.
Yeah.
So I got Squarespace that year. So like right after that big struggle moment, I got Squarespace, bought a tent, and applied to these outdoor shows. And like literally that year, I feel like my income doubled. Like, I would have to look back at my books, but I remember my accountant being like, what happened? Like,
that's a good feeling.
You know, and you're going like, I tried some new things.
You're like, indeed. Like, what happened?
It worked.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Well, and it's not like I got Squarespace and immediately sold out of everything, because that sure didn't happen.
Yeah.
You put all of this pressure on yourself to like get my work out there and put my website up, and you're like, is anybody going to buy anything?
Crickets. Yeah.
No. Not for a while. But, and then like I also was like worried that I would make $0 at a show. Mm-hmm. And those type of shows are like, it's like $30 to apply. I get into like half of the ones I apply to.
Yeah.
Still?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And then there's like booth fees.
Your booth fee is like $400 or ish. You know, some of them are much
so
more
it's a little bit of
expensive.
a risk to invest in.
Right. But then if you think about like the other route was a gallery, and they take 50% of everything you make. And I did a show where someone was taking 30%, and I was at a festival in Memphis, and the people who were at the festival, like in a booth, their booth fee was $400. I ended up making a lot of money, and the 30% was way more than $400. And I was like, I should buy a tent and be out there. Like,
yeah, it's interesting.
And and the whole tent thing, the reason I feel like that changed, it wasn't just like, oh, suddenly I'm selling all this work. It was truly just the deadline again, like goal-oriented person.
Yeah.
Like, I need like 40 paintings, like some small work, some medium work, some big work. They all need to flow together. My display needs to look good. So if I have a whole row of paintings that are all the same size, that will look nice in my booth or whatever.
Yeah.
So it helped me. It literally made me create more work than I'd ever created before, because I felt like I had to. Like, what if I sold 15 paintings at the first show and then I have another show the next month?
Yeah.
I would need 15 more. And the process of like actually creating more and more and more helped me find my voice. A ceramics professor, he like split his class in half, and one half of the class had to make as many as possible, like cups, bowls, plates, mugs, whatever. Wow. And the other half of the class had to make one perfect bowl, one perfect cup, one perfect mug.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like quantity and quality. And the students who literally just were going to be graded on making the most, like however many they could make, ended up making multiple perfect bowls and cups and plates. But the students who had this pressure on them to make one perfect bowl
I love that.
couldn't make a perfect bowl.
That's amazing.
Because they put too much pressure on each individual bowl instead of just like going for it. It's like the practice of quantity can make you better at quality. And I feel like that was true for the whole festival thing. Like when I started doing those, it made me a better artist. And some people look down on like festivals, but I feel like that's sort of the old way of thinking. Like, you must be in this nice gallery and you shouldn't do a festival. But I feel like just like with everything in life these days, no one cares anymore.
No one cares.
Have your own website, sell it on your porch, do whatever you want to do. Like,
I feel like in that type of attitude just doesn't help anybody. It's like if you have a way to get in front of people that are going to, experience your art, find it, love it, take it home, why wouldn't you be there?
Yeah. I don't remember ever saying no to any opportunity, especially those first few years.
Yeah.
It's like someone's like, we want you to hang your art in this coffee shop. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to hang our art in our lobby at our church? Sure.
Yeah. Do people walk by? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Totally. That's really cool.
I'm thinking about you taking that step into this whole new venue, right? For your work to be seen and encountered by people, and just the extra investment and the necessity that entered the picture when you sort of committed to that. I think that's really powerful too. Because sometimes, I think the feeling of necessity or like pressure really stifles people's creativity, their productivity, their view of themselves, whatever. But also it can do the opposite. It can motivate you and it can show you exactly how to forge the path that you need to forge because you have to now.
Yeah. I can't remember the artist's name, but there's some artist that I remember really liking when I first started out of school. And she always said, just get your hands moving. Like in the morning, like just start mixing up some paint, put it on some paper, like have something that you do that you don't care about. That's just the like getting your hands moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think I still try to do that sometimes. Like, I don't know what I'm going to make, but I'm at least going to start doing something.
Yeah.
That's such good advice.
Now that I have kids, I don't really ever have those, like, existential questions anymore. It's like, I got to get work done.
I got to do it.
Yeah.
I have an hour.
Speaking of necessity, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us about what that has been like. So you now have 2 daughters. You have a studio adjacent to your home.
Yeah. So I've always been a homebody. So even before, like even back in the granddad sunroom days, I liked that my studio was downstairs. And there was a time when I did live with a roommate for a little while, and I would drive to my sunroom studio at my granddad's house, and I was like, okay, every day I was like, okay, I gotta leave before traffic, so I'm gonna pack up all this crap and bring it with me and work on this when I get home tonight. And then I would have to lug all the crap back. And I was like, this is stupid. I hate this. And I was constantly like, how many snacks should I bring? What if I get uncomfortable in the shirt that I'm wearing? Like,
Yeah.
What if I want to
totally.
stop and work out in the middle of the day? I should take all of this stuff. So I
You're
didn't.
describing my life,
Yes.
basically. Yes.
I did not like the back and forth.
Uh-huh.
And so the first few years that I did my art, I nannied 2 days a week at least I nannied for 3 different families over about 6 years. And what was the point of saying that? Oh, like I just feel like I realized because of nannying, like a balance of I have to work out of my house. Like a lot of artists are like, oh, I can't wait to have this amazing studio space that I can go to. And I just never wanted that. And I was like, I just need so both times we house hunted, we were like, we have to have a home that has a big bonus room with lots of light.
Yeah.
So our first house in Marietta, it was a 1-car garage that someone had already turned into a room. So like the garage door, they turned into a sliding door. So it was like this humongous sliding door the size of a 1-car garage door.
Wow.
And then 3 windows because the house was built in like the 70s. And then actually our house here was built almost the exact same time. The other one was 69. This one's like 71 or something.
Wow.
Because those old houses are they have sunrooms and like a formal living room or like these extra rooms instead of putting all of every square footage into an open living room, dining room, kitchen.
Yeah.
They put the square footage in other places. So we found this house when we were thinking about moving to Nashville, and it had this enormous sunroom with a vaulted ceiling, and I was like, I want that house so bad. And the market here, like everything moves so fast, and that house just sat there. I mean, literally, I saw it in like June. We didn't put our house on the market until October.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I wonder if that house is still there. I looked it up. I was like, it's there. We got to go see it right now. And the price had dropped.
Oh, my goodness.
So it was actually sort of attainable.
It's closer.
And it was still like, oh, it still needs work. And it's still like the top of our price range, but I want to go see it. And I was like, I hope this house breaks my heart that I hate it. And instead I was like, I can't wait to live here. So that was great. So yeah, I have it's like a big sunroom off of the living room, which is great. My daughters are 3 and 7 months. So when we moved there, our older daughter was like 18 months. And now throwing another baby in there is like a whole new ball game. But it's nice to be able to because I couldn't go to work while she napped if my studio were somewhere else.
Right.
And I can work on my table or on the wall when she's playing on the floor in the room or whatever. So I just have to sort of make it work with her schedule and work when I can.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. What's been the most difficult part of that, would you say? What did you have to change the most, maybe?
So the hardest thing is the beginning of a series. Like the conceptual mind part where I'm thinking through what do I want to do next and starting these pieces that probably aren't going to be used, they'll probably be trash or end up in the drawer because I'm just getting my hands moving and working out an idea. Those are you literally can't get there until you just sat. And when you have a kid and they're taking a 2-hour nap, which is an ideal world. Some kids don't nap.
Yeah.
I was like, I have to train them to be good sleepers because otherwise I'll never get anything done.
Yeah.
And I feel like I really encourage her to play by herself, which I feel like is really important.
It's a good skill.
She's good at it. She'll just play and do whatever. And obviously she wants me to play with her, especially more now that she's about 3. She wants more from me than she used to. But she can still, if I play with her for 20 minutes and get her started on something fun, she'll just play by herself and I can work for 30 minutes or whatever. But the hardest thing is the whole, I don't have the headspace to just sit in my studio for 3 or 4 days thinking through this new idea and working out the issues, like, to get something started. So when I finished, like, I just finished a collection of work, and when I get started on whatever's next, I'll struggle, because it'll just be like, okay, so what size painting do I want to make next, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of lean on, like, the process, like I said. And also I do commission work, so I have, like, specific directions, like, make something this size with these colors. So I can lean on that when I'm feeling stuck with my own work, which can also be a trap, because you can just work on commissions forever. Like,
right.
About a week or 2 ago, I was like, okay, there's no end to commissions in sight. I've got to work on my own stuff, even though I have commissions hanging over my head.
Yeah. Which is also a blessing, I'm sure, that you have that.
Yeah.
It's very disciplined.
Because I, like, paint on the floor and then stitch and then paint on the wall, like, I sort of have to think through, okay, how much is on the floor? Like, how many pieces do I have in this one step? Because if I can't walk, and because it stresses me out when I have too many pieces all in one step of the process. And once I get them stitched and adhered, I feel like such a weight. Like, I'm like, okay, this painting is going to get finished soon.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, where is this going? I don't know. While it's just like the paper pieces on the floor that are turning into something, it can be a hard step to be in.
Yeah. It is interesting thinking about, like, that example and, like, your friend, you have different ways of sort of structuring or organizing how you divide up your attention, right? And I think that's a really cool just example of how every person can find a way that works for them to spread themselves across different, priorities or different projects or whatever. I know that's always a constant struggle for me too. Like, I'm a very, like, many projects at all times kind of person for sure. And sometimes it is hard to find the balance or even figure out how to find the balance or what's the mechanism of balancing it at all,
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes you have to be like, okay, what's going to make me feel better about all this? And sometimes what makes me feel better is like, okay, I have 4 paintings that are like 80% done, and then I have 10 paintings that are 20% done. Like, okay, let's finish the ones that are 80% so that they're, like, off of my to-do list, and then I can focus on getting these to 80% or whatever.
Definitely.
But yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm like, how do you even, if you've got, like, all those started, like, how do you even remember? You know, like, what's happening with which one?
That is hard. If I let too much time go by, I can't remember the vision I had when I started a piece. And in some ways, that's kind of a fun challenge to be like, okay, now I have to think of a new vision for this. And I do, like, I sketch in my sketchbook, and I sort of plan out my work. I don't paint super intuitively. Like, I have a plan. So I can always return to the sketch, and sometimes I'll even, like, put the color scheme that I want, or, like, write notes while I'm thinking of the idea in my sketchbook, so I can return to that later when I'm like, wait, what is this piece? Where is this going? But yeah, sometimes it is like, okay, I have to just finish this piece that someone else started a few months ago, basically.
Whoever she is.
Yeah, whoever that person was.
I remember her.
Yeah.
That's great.
There were some pieces I didn't finish before I had my baby in January. And that's how I felt when I returned back to those. I was like, okay, am I going to finish these, or should I start over? And ended up finishing most of them, but it was like returning to somebody else's work that I
that's
had to re-solve again.
Yeah.
Like, speaking of somebody else, I'm just picturing, and I do this with guests all the time, but, like, I'm picturing you as, like, the little girl or the, starting high school, and the teacher saw something, but then now, like, this is literally what you do all day, every day. It's, like, so drastic. Like, could you have ever imagined?
No.
No.
No, I mean, even out of art school, I was thinking, this is so unrealistic. I'm going to have to get a different job. Like,
Yeah.
when I was trying to make $400 a month, there were lots of dark days of like, what is the purpose of my life? And
Yeah.
and I really felt like, who am I supposed to help? Like, why am I doing this? And a lot of big questions those first few years. And now I don't know, like, I feel like I've established my own voice to the point where I don't have to like think, am I going to be an artist? Well, yeah, I am one, you know, this is what I do.
Yeah, and maybe just being you and having your voice in the world is enough.
Right.
You know, maybe that's enough of a help to everyone else.
Right. I don't have to be an art therapist.
That's right. It's so cool. It reminds me, I had a psychology professor in undergrad in Arkansas, which is why I got so excited when you said Texarkana. Mm-hmm. But I remember him telling our stats class, probably, like where no one wants to be there and no one's paying attention really. But he was talking to us one day about getting a PhD. And, you know, for whatever reason, like as a psych undergrad, we all just thought, oh, the ones with the PhD are the gods, you know, they're the deities of psychology or whatever. And he just told us, like, every one of you could get a PhD. You know who gets PhDs? The persistent ones.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
Like,
you just have to put your mind to it.
Yes. And it just reminds me so much of that because, you know, it's a soft science, but it's a science. And, you know, science and art, both disciplines, it's like whoever stays with it.
Yeah.
That's who, you know, who defines themselves. That's who sees the fruit down the road. And it's also process oriented too.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And you have to enjoy the process part for it to actually keep happening.
Totally. And I think, you know, the reason it might seem rare to some people that you can make a living doing art is because I think there are so many people who quit before they try. You know, it's like your dad telling you, well, just try it first.
Yeah.
You know, like, like it may not seem realistic, but you definitely can't do it if you don't try, you know?
Right. Well, and you have to ask yourself the hard questions to say, like, well, what do you want to make? And why do you want to make it? And where do you want to sell it? And how do you think is the best way for you to do that? And, you know, you don't have all those questions day one.
Yeah.
Right? You have to think through them and work through them on your own.
Yeah, I know. Has it been lonely ever?
Yeah, I guess so. I would say, I guess ever since having my kids, I don't think about that as much because I don't ever feel lonely now. But I do remember thinking that in the beginning, like, I always hit a point, like, I never hit it anymore, but I used to always hit a point in the day when I'd been in my studio for a really long time that I was tired of listening to music. And this is like, I mean, maybe podcasts existed back then, but I didn't know about them.
Yeah.
And so I'd always just turn on TV and watch like Friends or something I've watched a jillion times that I can just listen to that makes me feel happy. So I can just keep working and be in a good mood and feel like I'm not working. I'm like just hanging out, watching TV.
Hanging out with my friends.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm not lonely. I'm watching Gilmore Girls and drinking coffee. But yeah, I feel like that helped me. And I know a lot of people are like, you watch something while you're making stuff? I'm like, I'm not watching it. I'm like listening to it. I can't watch a new show.
Yeah.
Like just the other day I was trying to work and watch something that I'd never seen. I was like, this isn't working. I can't watch this.
Yeah, no, you'll miss everything. I love that you mentioned Friends because the first probably 5 years of my business when I basically all I did all day, every day was editing.
Yeah.
I would literally have that on in the background.
Yeah.
And so I say I've watched it, you know, however many millions times, but really I was just listening to it.
Yeah.
It's just background noise.
Yeah. I too was late to the podcast game, believe it or not. But it's so funny now. Even there's, you know, spots in my kitchen. We've been renovating our kitchen. And there's like parts of the cabinet that I was sanding when I was listening to a podcast about sharks. And every time I see it, I'm like, sharks! I'm like, whoa. I was just thinking, how much of that is built into your art pieces where you're like, oh, this is where Joey said, you know.
Right. I don't ever think about that, but I do sometimes think about music that I was listening to while I created that piece.
Cool.
That is cool.
And I actually have a friend who makes fun of me because I can't listen to just like this serene classical music all day long while I'm trying to get work done. So like I have a playlist that's like Beyonce.
Yes.
That like, okay, keep me going so that I can like dance to J-Lo while I'm trying to get.
I love that so much.
She thinks it's hilarious. She's like, you make these like serene paintings and you're listening to like.
You're shaking it.
Yeah.
Cardi B.
Yeah, exactly. You're listening to these very not calm music while
I
you do
didn't know
it.
that. I would never have guessed that.
And I don't do it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, my general playlist I listen to like every day is folk pop on Spotify. It's like happy, fun, upbeat. Most of the songs are like upbeat. They're not slow.
Yeah.
Not like angry.
Right. Not too folky.
Yeah.
Pop
Like
element.
that would be not a great mindset to be in.
Yeah.
While you're painting
Well,
with
and
pastel
like I
colors.
said with the whole Enneagram thing, I never really understood why I was the way that I am. But it was talking about how 3s like don't want to think about emotions when they're working on a task, and that they would be really resentful of somebody that keeps them from a task.
Okay.
Because we're task oriented and goal oriented, and so a lot of times I cannot listen to like a podcast that's like helpful for my business or my life or as a mom or just interesting in general. Anything that's going to be possibly emotional, I can't handle it.
Okay.
That's why I was like, Friends, who cares? I don't get upset when Ross cheats on Rachel. Like, I know it's going to happen.
Okay, we're on a break.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
I'm so glad you said that. It's perfect.
It is. But like, if I'm working in my studio and scrolling through Instagram and someone's like, you know, oh, my child's in the hospital, I literally am like, I can't think about that right now. Like, I will lose it. I will lose my task.
Right.
So like, I don't listen to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I even like, I have an Audible account to listen to audiobooks.
Yeah.
And I can't do that either. Like, a lot of times I'm not in the right place to listen to an audiobook while I'm working.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One time while I was pregnant, I was listening to, I'll think of it later, but it was a sad book. And my husband works from home too. And one of the musicians like walked through my studio with my husband to get to our back porch because they were going to like go out there and take a break. And I was so glad he walked through when he did, because like 10 minutes before that I was like sobbing. Oh my God. I literally had just turned the book off because I was like, I can't listen to this while I'm trying to work.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can just imagine the explanation.
Yeah.
Like, I just,
It was an audiobook.
just so moved by my own work.
It was The Light Between Oceans.
Oh.
It's a sad.
I don't know that one.
It's a sweet, sad book. I didn't end up finishing the audiobook. I watched the movie and was like, I don't think I can listen to that whole audiobook.
Seriously. I get so excited when I have long drives and I have a book ready.
That's when I like to listen to podcasts and books.
Totally. But half the time I will maybe my mood is changing in the car because like a couple hours in I'm like, okay, I need to take a break. Like little mental break. Yeah. Let's jump over to this other topic for a minute.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting.
Yeah, totally. I listen to like tons of true crime stuff, which is like really grisly. But like I love that. And I'm in full on like psychology analytical mode when I'm listening to it. It's really enjoyable for me. But then there's other stuff too that's like, if it's like, kind of like, about myself or like my well-being or my like a self-helpy type of thing or something, I'm like, no, I don't feel like being introspective in any way. I don't want to like feel anything. I just want to like analyze and like get into a story. Like that's I like can't be productive when I'm stopping to like reflect on things or having to like deal with emotions too.
Right.
So.
Well, and that can be hard for me too when because my art does need to have and does have a conceptual aspect.
Yeah.
So I have to think through, like I give myself specific time to think through that part of it separately, because I'm not really thinking about that
when you're executing
the whole time.
That's
right.
really interesting.
And that's why the beginning of paintings is the hardest part, is because that is when I am thinking of that.
That makes sense. I love that the Enneagram has helped, you kind of
understand yourself.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, because I always thought it was just like a little cold that I didn't want to like talk to people or answer my phone or look at things that I would normally care about.
We like tell ourselves stories about like, oh, I'm not good at that, or I don't.
That must make me bad.
I don't
somehow.
do that good enough,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it just makes total sense and it serves you well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So, if the beginning of paintings is the hardest part, you just finished the series and released it. So
such a weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, what's that part like?
So that part's, in some ways that's what most people would think is the scary part, to be like, here's my work.
Yeah.
But I guess because of social media, like I'm sharing it throughout the process and getting encouragement from my followers or whoever, like that's beautiful or this or that. So like it doesn't feel like that big pressure, like here's this series I've been keeping a secret for years. Like
it's
like
totally
if you were a
different.
painter a long time ago and you would be just by yourself painting going, hope somebody likes this. Or maybe they didn't care if anybody liked it. They just had to paint.
Yeah.
But,
that is hard to imagine.
Yeah. But like, because of social media, like I don't have that big fear when it comes to releasing the work. My only fear is that I'm not going to reach the deadline I created for myself. Because I'm like, okay, I'm going to release them on this day at this time.
Yeah.
And I'm such a procrastinator. Everything's down to the wire every time I do anything ever. So
I think that's normal too.
So yeah.
Yeah. But I love that the pressure is off a little because you have been sharing along the way.
Right.
You don't have this big buildup of vulnerability because you've been willing to share as you go, which I think some people wouldn't be willing to do that,
Yeah.
It's interesting too.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thanks so much. I feel like we've learned so much
I know.
from you. It's really fascinating. We could keep talking forever. Just to kind of close this out, do you have any advice for people who maybe are thinking of taking a first step or a next step and maybe doesn't feel very realistic for them? What would you say to them?
Yeah. I mean, so the biggest advice someone gave to me, I reached out to like one of my favorite artists right out of school, or maybe a couple years out of school, and I asked her advice, and she said to paint as much as you can and that the rest would fall into place. And I remember thinking, thanks for nothing. That's the dumbest advice ever.
Oh, I love it.
But
thanks for nothing.
Yeah, it's like, that's not what I meant. But it's kind of true. Like, you literally have to just put in the work and find your own voice. And the only way you can find it is by
doing it.
Like sitting in your studio and struggling through the process. But I think if you ever feel stuck, you just have to try something new. Like when I felt stuck, I tried working on paper, or like, so if you're a visual artist, you can switch grounds. Like instead of working on paper, you work on canvas or wood or whatever. Change that, or change your supplies for like this experimental series that you're not considering like, I'm going to sell this. You're just doing it to experiment and play, and then it will change and influence your real work, like your non-experimental work, and help you and change you in a good way to help you get out of the like funk of wherever you were. Yeah, I mean, I think anybody could be an artist. Like, if you want to go to art school, then go to art school. But if you don't, then just start painting. And a lot of people always comment when I post pictures in my studio, they're like, oh, your studio. I'm like, it's in my house. Like, when you house hunt, find a house with a great studio. Like, we were determined. Our first house, we saw like over 30 houses.
Wow.
Because we were just trying to find one that had a great studio space.
Yeah.
And the second time around, I was like, don't even take us to any house that doesn't have like big bonus room listed in the thing.
Yeah.
And like, so create the space that you need to do what you want to do and then show up and do the work.
I love that. Because you guys weren't even just looking for one. You were looking for 2 studios.
Yeah, he needed a studio space
Yeah.
that would be semi-separate.
Yeah.
And I wanted one that was like close to the kitchen and living room because I knew I would be like mom most of the day.
Right.
And so the fact that we found one with a sunroom right off the living room and it overlooks the backyard. So like someday when they're actually big enough to just play by themselves in the backyard.
Yeah.
Won't that be lovely? Maybe. But yeah.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now it's more like, did you just put something in your mouth? Don't choke on that.
Oh man. Well, I think that's such great advice.
Yeah.
I think that's a good reminder. Like, this isn't like, it's a room in the house.
Yeah. Well, and you have to
yours.
you have to acknowledge that it's worth the time that it takes to give yourself that space. Because there were lots of cute houses we could have bought that didn't have the right spot. And if we'd have bought a house and said, we might build a studio, it would have never happened.
Yeah.
So you just have to like give yourself what you deserve to do it.
I love that.
Me too. That's awesome. I also love that experimenting and playing are like in service of the quote unquote real work, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
totally.
so good.
When you literally, like even the series I just released, they were experiments at the beginning of the summer that I was like, okay, I'm done with maternity leave. I had all my spring shows and I needed to do something. So I had to get my hands busy doing something and wanted to like play with color. And then realized these are kind of developing into something pretty. Like these could be a series and but it didn't start out as like, I'm going to make a series of all 12 by 12 paintings on paper. It was like, it started as play.
I think it's cool that you're still playing.
Yeah.
You know? Thank you so much. We'll be sure to link to all your websites in the show notes. And so everybody can go connect with you on Instagram and on your site. You have beautiful work on there for sale.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for making the time for us.
It was fun.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, share with a friend, and follow us on social media. You can find more info and links in our show notes. And don't forget to check out our new single, Good Man, under the band name Jasper and Jade on Spotify. I'm just kidding.
We never know how to start or finish.